Welcome back. In our last video, we were talking about beginning to talk about the different characters that rise to prominence as the Republic faces these different crises. And so we talked about Crassus and his corrupt rise to fame with the subjugation of the slave rebellion of Spartacus. Another senator who rose to prominence at this time was a man called Gnaeus Pompey. His father had been a supporter of Sulla, and so on the more conservative side, on the more pro-Senate side. And as Pompey grew in prominence, the Roman army transferred this loyalty from Sulla to him. Pompey definitely recognized the importance of gaining the loyalty of an army for political advancement. He was made a consul in the year 70. In the year 67, he received a command to deal with pirates infesting the Mediterranean. And what was interesting was this command, by order of the Senate, gave him much more power than a consul in the field usually enjoyed. And so basically Pompey is given the power to make treaties, to make alliances, to declare war with the pirates who he's combating. And so this shows us a number of things about the way Rome is changing at this time and the Roman world is changing at this time. First of all, it shows us that the scope on which the Roman Empire, and it is now an empire, is operating on is much larger than it has been before, that it's operating on a Mediterranean world, not on an Italian world. And that it's become too large for the Senate to really be, and it doesn't have the infrastructure for the Senate to really govern foreign policy in the way they had traditionally. And so generals are kind of moving in and taking over that role. It also shows us how the Mediterranean is becoming the center of Roman life. Again, not Italy. So Rome is, the scope of the Roman world is expanding. It's expanding outside the capabilities and the infrastructure of the old Republic system. And Pompey is incredibly successful. He defeats the pirates in the Mediterranean, makes the Mediterranean secure for trade, bringing a lot of wealth into Rome. He is able to defeat and abolish the Seleucid kingdom, what's left of it. He is able to annex and take control of the kingdom of the Jews in Palestine. He creates a new Roman province in Syria, and he returns to Rome exceptionally popular and powerful. However, Pompey was not a shrewd politician. He returns to Rome and he does what, according to the Roman constitution, he was supposed to do. Leaves his army and comes to the city alone to show his respect for the separation of powers. That military might should not dictate political power and political agenda. However, this means that Pompey is powerless to convince the Senate to adopt his reforms. And so Pompey, despite being from the more conservative wing, despite being more pro-Senate, had come to recognize and support some moderate reforms, divesting some land on Roman military veterans. Served alongside his troops for a number of years. He'd been very successful. His troops loved him. They had a great relationship. Pompey perhaps wanted to do something for the troops, but he was unable to do so because without bringing the troops into the city, something he's uncomfortable doing, he is unable to convince the Senate to change its ways. So here we really see how the conservative Senate has dug its feet in or dug its heels in, and even someone who is basically on their side is not going to be able to convince them to adopt pragmatic reforms. Another influential politician during this period, if we move on to the next slide, was Marcus Tullius Cicero. And Cicero is kind of a throwback politician, someone who's successful not because of military success. He has a very unsuccessful military career, but because of his legal success and his rhetorical talents. And he uses this rhetoric to convince the Senate to overthrow a conspiracy of one of Crassus's minions, who was called Catiline. And so Catiline and Crassus had planned to replace the Senate, essentially, with Crassus's supporters. And Cicero is able to convince the senators that this plot exists, although he is unable to bring Catiline to trial. However, he convinces the senators to convict Catiline, even despite the process of a trial. This is a success that marks Cicero out for great things. But the difficulty is in the way in which this came back to haunt Cicero. was that it shows that even those Romans who still believed in the rule of law and still believed in the Roman Republic did not fully trust Roman institutions. That Cicero doesn't really believe that justice will prevail if Catiline goes to trial. The fourth and final major figure who emerges during this period was Julius Caesar. Now, unlike Pompey, who came from a family that supported Sulla, Caesar came from a family that had supported Marius, a more populist family, a family that hated Sulla. Caesar himself barely avoided death during Sulla's reign of terror, and members of his family were killed. And so Caesar's family and their family power has been destroyed, and Caesar rebuilds his family, his reputation, his position in society through a military and legal career. First of all, he again participates in defeating pirates in the Mediterranean. He then enters politics as a quaestor. He moves through the political ranks and is very successful. He marries a granddaughter of Sulla, which is pretty interesting because it shows how Caesar was pragmatic as well as being a populist. And so Caesar is already embodying a lot of the characteristics that we talked about last week that have made Rome successful and which seem to have evaporated. Resiliency, but also the ability to be pragmatic and flexible. So he's managing to forge some kind of political alliance here. In the year 61, Caesar is elected as consul and he builds an alliance with Crassus and Pompey. Caesar's political acumen, Crassus's money, Pompey's military success, the three of them together, if we move on to the next slide that addresses this directly, will become known as the First Triumvirate. And so the idea is they're going to work together to achieve reforms of the Roman Republic and increase their own power. In the year 58, Caesar went to Gaul as the proconsul of Gaul, which means he holds the power of imperium, the power to command armies in that province. He spent 9 years there, and he successfully played one Celtic tribe against another and dramatically expanded the amount of territory under Roman control. He even led raids across the Rhine into modern-day Germany and across the English Channel into modern-day Britain. And these campaigns enabled Caesar to build up a battle-hardened army and an army that was loyal to him. And again, you can see the corruption of some of the ideals of the Republic in that Caesar wasn't supposed to hold a command for 9 years. The idea was that generals will move more quickly than this, and this prevented armies from developing a loyalty to a commander that superseded their loyalty to the Republic. Caesar also, through these campaigns and through his talented descriptions of these campaigns, which were disseminated for propaganda purposes and political purposes, he builds up a very popular political following, and he also builds tremendous wealth. So he's wealthy, has an army that's fiercely loyal to him, and he has a growing political following. And so you can see how soon Caesar is not going to need the other two triumvirs, Crassus and Pompey. And you can also see how Caesar is already developing and displaying his abilities as a decisive and calculating leader. Meanwhile, in the year 54, Crassus, who wanted his own share of military glory, Pompey in the east, Caesar in the north, took an army and went to fight the Parthians. An expedition was a disaster. The Romans were unable to cope with the mobile and fast-paced fighting of the Parthian horse archers, and in the end, the Roman army collapsed from lack of water. And so now the triumvirate has been ended. And so unless Caesar and Pompey can really trust one another, they're probably going to struggle to do that. This is going to lead to